Patrick Johnston joins me, Paul Chapman, for Canucks This week's. From
Comeback.
don't call it comeback, Patrick. I've been here for years. Anyhow,
you know what, Paul? I was just waiting for this, the cold weather to break and sunshine out our window.
We had a number of scheduling technical issues, things. So I appreciate your patience, everyone. We did not stop doing these. We did stop doing them, but we've brought them back. We endeavored to do them not only through every week for the rest of the season, but also maybe daily or 3-4 times a week during the playoffs. I think it's safe to assume the Canucks will make the playoffs. We're going to do 2 videos here. We'll call this part 1, and we're going to focus on sort of what's in front of the Canucks right now.
Right.
And then a part 2 is going to cover some of the stuff we missed at the trade deadline, contract extensions, and where this team is in the bigger picture. So, Patrick, let's start in the immediacy. We are recording this on Thursday. Canucks get a loser point, but did blow a 3-0 lead against the Avalanche. I think Canuck fans obviously were pretty encouraged by seeing how, I don't want to say easily the team handled Vegas, but after a bit of a downturn and there was this concern they can't beat the good teams, they looked very good facing a couple of those good teams.
Yeah.
And then we had last night. So what's your assessment of last night? I know Demko is injured. Is this just sort of par for the course with this team, the ups and downs of the season, or is there cause for concern?
I don't think there's cause for concern. I think this is the point that Rick Tocchet made post-game about being soft on pucks and controlling the puck was everything, right? Like, that is why they were so successful last week when they played the Jets, when they played the Kings, when they played Vegas, right? Like, they controlled the game. They determined where the game was going to be played. And for a lot of last night, they were doing that. And then you got to the third period, which notably has been a struggle lately. They lost their way and they ceased to control. Now, obviously, you're playing against Colorado Avalanche. You're playing against Nathan MacKinnon, who, if this weren't Connor McDavid's league, it would be Nathan MacKinnon's league. And so that was the reminder of the danger of that, and it's going to happen. You're not going to win every game, but this was the reminder that this is what happens if you don't press your stick hard enough on the ice, if you don't move your feet quickly enough, if you don't make your decisions quickly enough, if you don't help each other out off the puck, all those things that kind of came apart, I would say, last night. And so that's where I'm at. I said it was a good reminder. I mean, they played like they'd been playing really well, and they actually played pretty well last night until the end. It all kind of fell apart. So I wouldn't be too concerned.
Well, okay, I do hear you, but you're coming off 3 days rest. You're playing a team on the road that had back-to-backs. Yeah, you've got a 3-goal lead. Is there a lack of a killer instinct there, or is this just one of those games?
I think that is not an unreasonable question. Did the Canucks sort of take their foot off the gas? And for once, Paul finally gets one. They did take their foot off the gas. Like, they were definitely guilty of that. And if there's something to be concerned about, it's that they have showed killer instinct. They've had a lot of wins, and they're not an accident. But yes, I mean, the way the game finished up, with the shots going as badly as they did, 17-3 in the third period, that comes back to the point I was making, that in this moment, like, there is a lesson, right? Like, don't ignore that, right? But turn around and point back to the way they closed the door in Vegas, the way they closed the door in LA, the way they closed the door against Winnipeg. Colorado's as tough and as strong as it gets, right? And this is what happens. And so, I'm not worried because they've done so well this season, right? Like the trend is there, right? Like, that's the thing. It's not that this has been happening time and time again. There were some struggles last month, which were inevitable, but on the whole, the team has mostly played well to close out games. They've won all these games because they've not done this. So, one game I'm not too worried about.
Okay, so Edmonton 9 points back, but have 3 games in hand.
Right.
Now, I mean, you can
Paul, it's hockey though. Remember, that's only 6 points. It's not 9. This isn't 9 points for them to quickly make up.
Yeah,
not
we're not
soccer.
we're not we're not talking about soccer. No, but still, I mean, the Oilers have been one of the better teams
Sure.
after a really rough start.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say though, this schedule for the Canucks, they only have five. Is it 4 or 5 road games till the end of the season? They're in this. That's the
Yes.
game two of a like
Yeah.
stunning 9-game
Yeah.
homestand. Like I've rarely seen a
I,
schedule like this,
yeah.
with some gaps in between too. It's not like they're playing every second day. So, are there, despite like maybe a couple of bumps really in the last month, Canucks are still second overall in the NHL. Yeah, they've got games in hand on a lot of teams.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think they're positioned heading into the playoffs? Like, because I think it's fair to say, like, we can start focusing on the playoffs now and who their opponents might be and looking at this
Yes.
jockeying. But I mean,
Yeah.
this schedule obviously has to help setting up going into that
Oh,
period.
yeah. I mean, just look at the next 4 games, right? Like they've got a wounded Washington on Saturday. They've got Buffalo, Montreal, Calgary next week. 3 teams that are clearly out of
Terrible.
the playoffs and terrible, not playing well. I mean, they're set up really well here to continue to pile up points. The close to the season is challenging. Starting with that home game against LA on the 25th. They host the Stars on the 28th. Then they're on a road trip to Vegas again, back to back, playing in Arizona the next night, which isn't, Arizona's not great, but it's a back to back. But also, it's Vegas to Phoenix is like 10 minutes on an airplane, so it's not like it's the end of the world. But playing the Kings again, playing Vegas again, playing the Oilers, finishing in Winnipeg, like those games to close things off in April, like for the most part. I mean, they have twice Arizona and they got Calgary, but the rest of them are pretty tough opponents.
But
So
looking ahead to the
that to
playoffs,
me
though.
is, well, I was going to say, to me, that's actually what you want, right? Like they're going to have a nice, challenging finish to the season to set them up to get ready for the playoffs, for when they'll start on April 23rd or whatever they're going to be.
But
27th.
looking at that though, is there a matchup that, I mean, obviously you've got to win whoever's in front of you if you're going to
Yeah, sure.
make it to the Stanley Cup. Although famously, as I saw people referencing the last couple of days, 2 of the Canucks Stanley Cup runs were really set up by someone else taking out one of the beasts.
Yeah.
So, but typically you've got to go through the best teams to get there. We've seen them handle Vegas. They've have some troubles with Vegas, but handle Vegas. We've seen them have some troubles with the Kings, but handle the Kings. Same thing with the Jets. The one team that does strike me, though, because they've been playing so well, is Edmonton. That one game left against Edmonton is going to be really interesting, only because the Canucks played them when both teams were in very different places. So, is there a matchup in the West here that you think the Canucks should be a little more fearful of?
Well, I mean, Edmonton, sure, just because there is that high octane. And the way Edmonton has turned the ship around is really remarkable. I mean, they have now third best goal differential in the Western Conference. But
this isn't soccer, Patrick, as a wise man just said in the last 5 minutes.
But the point is that the Edmonton were in such a bad way to start the season. It wasn't just that they were losing games; they were losing games badly, and now they're not. And some of that's because they're getting hot goaltending from goaltenders you maybe don't expect them to be playing hot. Some of it is their defense core is playing better, and a lot of it is just because Connor McDavid remains the best player in the world. And when he's on the ice, everything happens in the right, the offensive end of the ice, and they just don't have to play defense. They're still, 9, and 7-2-1. The mountain is very, very high for Edmonton to climb to really catch the Canucks. They could get close. Like I fully expect they'll get close, but just so Canucks have 15 games left, right? You win half of those. That's 16 points. That's 108 points. To get to 108 points, Edmonton would need 25 points out of their remaining 18 games. And that means winning 12 out of 18 games. Now, they've won 7-2-1, right? Like they keep winning, which is a good thing for them. Right? The odds are that they are going to get close. I think they will win a large bulk of those games. But that also presumes that you think the Canucks are only going to win half their games. And you just look at next week. I mean, the odds are that they will win almost all those games, if not all of them. So, as well as Edmonton's playing, the Canucks are going to be sitting in the driver's seat, sitting in first place. And certainly the first round matchup is the one to consider. Can Vegas pull it together obviously tired, worn out from their win last year. This is why it's so hard to repeat. Obviously dealing with injuries, trying to integrate some new players, adding Hannafin, adding Hurdle. Will they finish in the second wildcard spot? Can the Canucks? I mean, I think the Canucks probably are going to secure first place, but they're in tough against Dallas and Colorado, who are only 3 points back. Like, if you want to talk about an actual chase, it's not so much the Oilers. It's what Dallas or Colorado could do, trying to win both the Central and then trying to take first overall in the conference. Because if you win first overall in the conference, you know you're playing the lower of the two seeds in the wild card. I'm not a huge fan of Nashville. The Canucks, I think, ideal opponent would be Nashville, just because there's less threat there. They're good. I'm not discounting them as they're a good team, but the Canucks have had their way with them this season, and there's a reason why, because the Canucks are just deeper and more talented. So yeah, there's still a lot to play for, right? Like the Canucks, I think the players know that. They can see the positioning of where they're at, what they want to be, and ideally, that sets you up. If you win that first round, you got home ice advantage through the whole playoffs, right? Like that's what you want.
So last night, again, special teams, that has been a sore point all year. Even when the team was going well, that was the one complaint, that whether it was the power play or the penalty kill, maybe was not quite as good as people expected, and certainly not as good as they are when they're 5-on-5. So we all know that the NHL has this agenda against the Canucks, and there's a directive given to every official that, you have to call phantom penalties and then not call any when they, like, I'm being a little bit ridiculous and dramatic here, but that's everything I read from Canuck fans. What worries you more, Demko's injury or the way the Canucks are playing special teams heading into the playoffs?
Probably the special teams. I think the penalty kill remains a talking point, right? Like, it's been good. It's had improvements. But they gave up 2 goals to the Avalanche, right? Like that's the difference in the game. That to me more than anything, Demko's going to be back. Like, listen, our best guess on this obviously is that it's a mild knee sprain, which sort of tracks with what they're sort of reported. We're heard, 2 to 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. Talking, obviously saying week to week, not denying it's a knee, but not saying it is otherwise. Which puts
a separate point. If the NHL is going to take gambling money, which they are fully in bed, they need to be more transparent with their injuries. But
it's ridiculous,
that's a topic for another day. But
yeah, it's ridiculous. Like there's anyway. But the point is that he's going to be back. Like I'm not concerned about that. He'll be back with a week or 2 to go in the season. He'll get a bunch of starts right at the end. He'll be ready to go. The PK has been a question for long stretches of the season. There have been moments where they've been really good, but they've had some struggles. They obviously aren't as bad as they were a couple seasons ago. But in the end, if you're going to be an elite team, you need an elite PK, and they've got to figure that out.
Okay, we'll finish up here before we record a part 2. You should be able to get both these parts. We'll post them at the same time, but as we finish all our videos, we'll leave the Calgary game out of it because we'll record one next week. But Washington, Buffalo, Montreal at home.
I think they're going to sweep.
Yeah, me too.
Washington. I think Washington is just kind of. It's interesting. Like talking to someone who's been watching a lot of, just has ended up watching the Caps fairly often this year. And they're just, the power play, their power play. Everyone talks about look at their, but you know what? They'd only do one thing, and teams know what it is.
Yeah.
And they try to hammer it off Ovi. And Ovi, listen, still a great player. He's still going to score a bunch of goals, but he is not the goal scorer he used to be.
Well, it's funny, Patrick, because probably halfway through last season, maybe the end of last season, there was always he's going to pass Gretzky. People looking at the numbers. I think this year we've seen a little bit of maybe you don't hear that conversation as much.
Yeah, he's got 18 goals. Like what it presumed that discussion was. Listen, he had 42 goals last year. He had an amazing goal scoring season. He had 50 goals 2 years ago. Like he had been on this, and he had kept on his incredible pace. That you go back to basically the beginning. I mean, there's a dip, if you will, in the early teens where he had 32 and then 38 goals, right? But then picks it back up after the lockout, just incredible pace. A dip in 16, 17, 33 goals, but hitting in and around 50 goals every season. even in the COVID season, 24 goals in 45 games. I mean, that's a 40 goal, that's a 42 goal pace or something like that. But like in and around that, 50 goals in 21-22, 42 last year. So, it is possible he'll pick it back up and get back up to 35, 40 goals. But it is notable that he is only at 18 goals this year. He is turning 39. And when things sometimes come to an end quickly, like for a guy like this, obviously Crosby and him are tied together forever. Crosby still managed to battle away. But for a guy like Ovechkin, the Capitals in the end are just they're not a very good team. John Carlson's still putting up some points, but they've traded away Anthony Mantha. Evgeny Kuznetsov was dealing with personal issues and is now not even a Capital. There's no obvious kind of second wave really coming through there. Just looking at the roster, like Connor McMichael's not a bad player, and Dylan Strome's a good player, but he's 26, and it's just there's just not a lot there. Our old friend Ethan Bear, of course, there, so we'll have to try to catch up with later this week. But it's a team that's really got to move. It's got to get moving on its future, and obviously Ovechkin could be the old wise hand there, but. They're just not the team they were. And then then you look at the rest of the week, and Buffalo and Montreal, obviously both two teams that Buffalo had some playoff ambitions. Buffalo forever that story where you look at them, you're like, these guys, this has got to be the year, right? This has got to be the year. And it's not.
They mirror the Canucks to me, and they are kind of where the Canucks have been the last 7 years, and it just seems like the Canucks have sprung out of it, and they haven't. And of course, franchise cousins. I just want to, you say things come to an end quickly, like Ovechkin, much like this podcast. I just have to harken back. We have a lot of fun within the industry of like the cliched King's crowned, flames doused, that kind of stuff. I do have to mention with Washington coming to town, one of my all-time favorite leads, Ian McIntyre. This was probably back in the early 90s. The Capitals played like small letters last night. A little bit of a twist.
Bring that up to him. I thought we were going to do, because the Province headline at some point would have been Caps capped, right?
Yeah, something like that. But Caps locked. Anyway, we're going to come back. Yeah, we're going to come back with a second, a part two, where we're going to speak more generally about Pettersson's contract, about the trade deadline, about where this team is in terms of its sort of the era more so than specifically the season. So thanks for watching, listening. Whether you want to dive right into the part two or save it for later, that's up to you. We got to get Patrick off to practice as well today. So sign up for Canucks Report, read Patrick's stuff, send him your questions for his weekly mailbag. Thank you for watching.